Teachers of Reddit, what is the biggest holy shit red flag of any kind you've seen from a student? NSFW. I was giving a spelling test to my third graders and one student calmly got out her glue and poured it in her ear. I teach middle school math. We have a Saturday school once a month for students with failing grades to get extra help in whatever subject. One kid did not want to be there and he was placed in a conference room in the office so he didn't disturb the other kids. So this kid pulled out a tooth. An adult tooth. He pulled it out of his face. It was terrible. This is honestly the worst one I've read. The best part was that I had to run to grab some copies from the area he was in and checked on him. Smiling, gap in teeth, tells me, hey, my tooth fell out. This guy was disturbing other kids? He'd be disturbing me at that point. I remember a kid in 5th grade that would shit in his pants, reach down there, pull some out, roll up little dookie balls and throw it at the other kids, all the while laughing like he was having the time of his life. That's gotta be some kind of red flag. Edit, I'm not teacher, by the way. But I saw the question and instantly thought of this kid. I was in the 5th grade in 1980. The protocol for handling this kind of behavior in children is probably different now. Hopefully, he got some help. I would agree that's pretty out there. This was a long time ago. I'm not a teacher but was doing a co-op placement as an educational assistant when studying sociology. We're talking like 15 years ago, give or take. Had a student in the class, with behavioral problems mind you, walk up to another teacher who was pregnant and proceed to tell her he was going to cut the fetus out of her. Nobody really knew how to react, and the tone in his voice, look in his eyes was up there with the most evil shit I've seen up till that point in my life. So was he reprimanded or? He had severe behavioral problems related to his disability. He was sent home and kept at home for a number of weeks but was eventually allowed back to class. This was an experimental program, no longer exists, at this one high school for rather severe behavioral issues, so the rules were bent quite a bit while I was there. He was a rather pleasant kid more often than not, but when he had his bad days he was one of the worst in respects to violence and threats. My friend teaches and told me this. He had a student who constantly picked at his scabs. He would rip them off and eat them, then lick the blood off his fingers. Then pull alcohol swabs out of his backpack and clean the wound while smiling creepily. He made everyone feel super uncomfortable and grossed out, but no matter what, he wasn't removed from the class. Finally one day my friend comes back from the teacher's lounge to find him using a letter opener, under his skin and moving it back and forth, blood everywhere. When asked what he was doing he said his skin itches and it's best to get it at the source. The kid was finally removed from the school. My friend never found out where or what happened to him though. I have dermatillomania, and trichotillomania, and honestly I kind of understand this. I don't pick my skin in public, but I can imagine that if I had less social awareness for any reason I might have done something similar growing up. As someone who also has really bad dermatillomania, that's the first thing I thought of when reading this. Even as an adult with a decent sense of social awareness, it's hard sometimes for me not to pick at my skin when I'm out in public. Especially if an imperfection is visible or I can feel it or I don't have adequate focus on something else. Poor kid probably wasn't doing it to intentionally creep anyone out, but having a super hard time dealing with his urges and not getting proper mental health care that would allow him to overcome them, I hope anyway. There was a kid in my brother's 5th grade class who tattooed himself with pen ink. It worked and he was forced to wear sleeves when he played on the middle school basketball team so they didn't show. He's in prison. Edit, I should clarify that doing a few dots or a little smiley face isn't a big deal, people do that all the time and turn out alright. This kid did his entire arm down to the elbow. I knew a guy who did that too. He smokes meth now but he almost convinced me to let him tattoo me as well, but thankfully my brain was just slightly developed enough to refuse. He is a good guy but I don't really know what happened. We were best friends until grade 10, then he went hard on the drugs and I got super into sport. My friend runs a swim club for kids. She once got a complaint from some mothers that one 8-year-old boy was performing fellatio on some 6-year-old boys in the changing room. The kid wasn't allowed to come back, and it turns out that his grandfather molested him. That's where he learned the whole thing. This happened to me in kindergarten. Nap time was the worst because we had to pick spots on the ground with our blankets and this one boy would follow me around until I found a spot and lay down next to me. Then he'd ask me to kiss his wiener and try to kiss me too. The teacher would just yell at me to hurry up and pick a spot, but I was trying to get away from him the whole time. I finally told my mom and my parents told the teacher. Turns out another girl left this school because of the same problem with this boy. The school basically told us Therese nothing they could do and that my parents could send me to a new school if they wanted. And that's the story of how I started going to private school. Don't know what happened to that kid, but looking back it's clear something wasn't right at home for him to know that stuff and act on it. Edit, this was 1996 to 1997 for everyone curious. I still remember the details very vividly. It was straight up like this 5-year-old kid wanted to have oral sex with me. I know his name, but Googling it doesn't help. I'd like to think this hasn't affected me in any major way. I mostly feel bad for him because he had to learn that somewhere. There was nothing they could do? WTF? That sounds like they were either being terribly irresponsible or covering abuse. I was only 5 or 6 at the time, so I didn't understand the adult perspective about the situation, but I remember my parents expecting the boy to be expelled or at least put in a different class. But the school didn't do anything to him. I think they offered to put me in a different class actually. The teacher didn't even get in trouble even though she wasn't paying attention to us at all during nap time. I do remember that his parents were notified of his behavior. Mom taught for 30 plus years, about 10 of them were in a self-contained classroom. So, if kids didn't succeed in this self-contained unit, they were expelled entirely, so worst of the worst. She loved the kids and over that time had only 2 that truly frightened her. The common thread was they had no effect whatsoever, they were never happy, never sad, never jealous, never vengeful. It was just nothing. At least the kids who were angry, frustrated, apathetic, silly, etc. were feeling something. Of those 2 kids, one is now in jail for a long, long time. She doesn't know what became of the other one. No effect whatsoever this. I taught in a similar setting for 4 years. Only one kid got to me like that. His last day when he had a meltdown and the cops took him to the hospital for evaluation. She taught HS, in total, for 35 years, different schools, different types of classrooms, different settings. Those were the only 2 among those thousands of students she taught that got under her skin. This year I had a female student, middle school, who had cut her arm so many times you couldn't really see the skin, just a bunch of bloody, scabby cuts. She hid it well at school as it was winter and the students were all wearing sweaters. We only found out because one of her friends started crying and told me I needed to talk to her immediately. Yeah, this is so sad. When I was in middle school there was a girl who would always have a ton of cuts, not even just on her wrists. It was on her hands and everything too, and she would just tell people, I don't know how these got here. I think my cat scratches me in my sleep. I felt awful looking back a couple of years later that we all just ignored it when it was so obviously self-harm, which we should have recognized by that point. Used to have a kid in my class that enjoyed hurting others. Laughing right after throwing something at a student and laughing harder at them being affected by said action. I was in charge of an after-school program for junior high and high school students, 13 to 18 years old. One time I was waiting for a 13-year-old girl to get picked up with her friend, and this is the conversation I hear from across the room while they were messing with the whiteboard. Girl 1, draw a swastika. Girl 2, you can't do that, that's bad. Girl 1, why? Girl 2, I don't know, I just know bad. Girl 1, it's okay, my dad has it tattooed on his chest. Me, edit 1, I was working in a semi-rural part of the US, and dad was a white guy who lived in a trailer park. I'm not one for stereotypes, but I'm pretty sure the guy wasn't Hindu. Or Buddhist. But I appreciate this sub's ability to always look for a silver lining. Edit 2, Spieling and Grammar. Metal Gear Solid Alert Sound.wave. Source, wife is a teacher. 8th grader would smear his own shit on the restroom walls. Threatened to rape my wife in the comments section on her classroom YouTube channel. Rookie mistake using your real name as your username. When called out for it, parents lawyered up and said no one could ever prove his account wasn't hacked, so we had no way of knowing it was him. Later my wife found a note near her classroom door in his handwriting saying he was going to shoot up the school and that he already knew where everyone was going to hide. School went on lockdown and he was later found hiding in the woods behind the soccer fields. When questioned about it he said he ran because he was scared. I could go on. Kid will likely shoot up his high school.